Uncle Jasaneb, Dua Wabet, Dua Amun Rakata, Dua Nature Nature. Thank you for joining me today. Coming from the White Lotus Temple, we're located in Lage, Babano. Babano is the last surviving African art called the Kili, which Catholicism destroyed. So we're greeting you from St. Lucia, to my people from other regions, my international family, Etepu, to my locals here in St. Lucia, welcome. C'est une bonne journée, bonne venue, ouais moi. So nous allons parler about African history. Before I go into what I really want to discuss with my people, I want to read a little bit from Ayi Kwe Ama. He's my favorite African author. Some really nice novels. You should try to get his books. This one is called 2000 Seasons. Reading, that's a piece of the prologue. Okay. The reign of the destroyers has been long. It will be longer. But what is our present despair against the sharp abandonment of those first snatched away to waste? What pettiness is this, our anxiety against the howling agony of their murdered soul? Remember this, against all that destruction, some yet remained among us unforgetful of origins, dreaming secret dreams, seeing secret visions, hearing secret voices of our purpose. Further, those yet to appear, to see, hear, to utter, and to make, little do we know what changes they will come among. Idle then for us to presume despair on their behalf, foolish when we have no knowledge how much closer to the way their birth will come, how much closer than our closest hopes. Not all our souls are of a nature to answer the call of death, however sweetened. Easy these seasons to forget this too. Seasons, and seasons ago, the first 1,000 seasons passed. Before the passing of the second 1,000, even before then, the time will come when those multitudes starting out on the road of death must meet predecessors returning scalded from the white taste of death. These first returners, their wounds are so raw, their minds so butchered with the enormity of a fate so recently, so closely grazed, that the very sound of their voices, the very sight they present, is unacceptable, unreal, impossible to the hastening, careless, prancing, advancing multitudes. These first returners, amid the general oblivious happiness, they appear mere capricious nightmares, specific, unfortunate accidents, particular mishaps to be sidestepped on the jubilant white road, single apparitions easy to ignore, most pleasantly easy to forget. That's what I'm telling you. He's one of the best authors I know. But further along the road, more returning apparitions arise. They are intermittent still, but frequenter. Mind still unwounded in the dizzy, happy deathward rush. Chancing upon this frequency of warning, casualties begin to wonder if the advancing dance will really be the promised revelry. More apparitions, the thoughtful are are given greater pause. There are many now, some half concealed in the other wreckage, along the happy highway, completely ruined, bled of life's justice, of life's juices. They have staggered, groping for the source, their purpose now the contempt past. Unable to stagger farther, they lie unburied by the common road, their corpses multiplying, their feet pointing to their destruction. Returning casualties, many now and desperate, challenge the progressing revelers for right of way. When the numbers of the hopeful go in and the desperate fleeing back are almost even, then the interrupted revelry becomes pure carnage. For those who, for those with no understanding of the source, those blessed in their ignorance of doom's whiteness, the blind revelers are anxious to cascade away to obey the highway's call. Those who have seen the white destination and yet escaped death, stampeding back, crash in unbuffered collision against the revelers. In their spirits, contempt from those escaping death, contempt against the revelers for seeking what so recently they themselves sought, clashes with pure incomprehension from the hopeful revelers. How indeed would a living understanding come to those who have fled knowledge of the source? And those running back to the source in their new desperation, have they not more fear of death's horror than love of life? Whiteness indeed they have known, of our own blackness they have yet to learn. You who yearn to be hearers, you who would see, you the utterers of the future, this is not the season for contempt. Look upon those in whose nature it is to wait upon death, to create in them a need to know life. Look upon them, but in this season do not look too steeply. Say then the multitude is noisy after the shaking, shattering knowledge of the pale road of death. Are your ears also dead? This noise is not the recent uniform cacophony of death victorious, death alone ruling. Now the customary noises of triumphant death have the tone of lies to some of our ears. In such a season, the voice informed with knowledge of the way, the voice whose utterance is inseparable from life, that voice will be heard. For there are ears straining against the loud nonsense of the destroyers, ears that have heard all the sweet and easy sounds of death and found them false. Would you lock your gift away in pallid silence? Know then that in the absence of the utterer's work, the carnage will be long and pure, and not the wisest mind can, in the absence of the utterer's work, trace in all our flowing blood even one broken ring of meaning. For those returning, salvaging blistered cells from death, and those advancing, still hypnotized by death in the absence of the utterer's work, what will they be but beasts devouring beasts, zombies fighting zombies, a continuation along the road of death in place of regeneration, the rediscovery of our way, the way? Leave the killer's spokesmen, the predator's spokesmen, leave the destroyer's spokesmen to cast contemptuous despair abroad. That is not our vocation, that will not be our utterance. This is, well, one of my favorite novels. It's a novel, though it's based on actual African history. It's called 2000 Seasons by Aikweyama. It's a very good read, He goes into our disconnection and how we are not a whole people as the different governments try to portray, separate from our brothers and sisters who were stripped away from the motherland. This is really about us coming together, us collaborating and doing events, whether it be on an international, regional, or or local level, that we must find ways to entice the youth, especially, into joining us in the struggle of getting back our true identity, which lies now obscured, I would say intentionally, because of tourism and the fire of our ancestors who led the way for us, like Henry Sylvester Williams of Trinidad, Marcus Garvey of Jamaica, uh, Walter Rodney of Guyana, Blyden. So we have a lot of people to learn from. I want to just read a little piece of the philosophies and opinions of Marcus Messiah Garvey. A piece, page 29, about traitors. In the fight to reach the top, the oppressed have always been encumbered by the traitors of their own race, made up of those of little faith and those who are generally susceptible to bribery for the selling out of the rights of their own people. As Negroes, we are not entirely free of such an encumbrance. To be outspoken, I believe we are more encumbered in this way than any other race in the world, because of the lack of training and preparation for fitting us for our place in the world among nations and races. The traitor of other races is generally confined to the mediocre or irresponsible individual, but unfortunately, the traitors among the Negro race are generally to be found among the men highest placed in education and society, the fellows who call themselves leaders. Greetings, Guyana, Rastafari Council. Blessed love, Uncle Jocelyn. For us to examine ourselves thoroughly as a people, we will find that we have more traitors than leaders, because nearly everyone who essays to lead the race at this time does so by first establishing himself as the pet of some philanthropist of another race, to whom he will go and debase his race in the worst form, humiliate his own manhood, and thereby win the sympathy of the great benefactor, who will dictate to him what he should do in the leadership of the Negro race. It is generally, you must go out and teach your people to be meek and humble. Tell them to be good servants, loyal and obedient in their masters. If you will teach them such a doctrine, you can always depend on me to give you $1,000 a year or $5,000 a year for the support of yourself, the newspaper, or the institution you represent. I will always recommend you to my friends as a good fellow who is all right. With this advice and prospect of patronage, the average Negro leader goes out to lead the unfortunate mass. These leaders tell us how good Mr. So-and-so is, how many good friends we have in the opposite race, and that if we leave everything to them, all will work out well. This is the kind of leadership we have been having for the last 50 years. Well, let's say it's been more longer than that. It is nothing else but treachery and treason of the worst kind. The man who will compromise the attitude of his country is a traitor. And even so, the man who will compromise the rights of his race can be classified in no other way than that of a traitor also. Not until we settle down as 400 million people and let the men who have placed themselves in the lead of us realize that we are disgusted and dissatisfied and that we shall have a leadership of our own and stick by it when we get it. Will we be able to lift ourselves from this mire of degradation to the heights of prosperity, human liberty, and human appreciation? Words by Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey. So in this, he's saying that basically our leaders are traitors. So it is a fact, indeed, as well. I live in St. Lucia in the Caribbean, and right now we do have a European Prime Minister, and of course, this is an insult to many of us. But what can you do in a system designed to keep you down? Our only alternative is to spread the knowledge we attain. The youth will be called on to lead the struggle soon enough. And we need to get to them using the principles of course, Tehuti, Heteru, beauty, creativity, knowledge, not just left-brained knowledge, which deals with only the information, but also right-brain knowledge of connecting everything together, the universal truth. So in 2020, White Lotus Temple is looking to do many collaborations, start to have more events, because more and more it's becoming very evident that we need to do something. We cannot just sit back and wait on, well, an invisible God in the sky to do anything, and then we know that God helps those who help themselves. So in helping yourself, then you also have the other forces come in and help you. The other forces of nature. I will just go through a few books. This is just the first. This is just the first Facebook Live. So I'll just go through a few books. I think in the future we may be going through books one at a time, because not everyone has time to read. Unfortunately, the world we live in today, we have become slaves building other people's dreams and not our own. So I will go through some books, because I know we do not have the time. Some of us don't have the time to read those books. I started very early, thanks to Cujo, your pops, my cousins. He took me from very young, and he taught me a lot. He introduced me to Dr. Ben, John Henry Clark, Ivan Van Sertima, a whole list of scholars. And I just continued with it up to 20 odd years later, up to today. And we've gathered more books, we've gathered more knowledge, and I'm just continuing. The baton was passed to me, so I'm continuing, hopefully, to pass that baton to someone else. Of course, they would inherit the books and everything, because we need to have a system of passing on our traditions. Because you have to relearn to be an African again. We lost it. We lost it a long time ago. We did not forget. We were beaten to forget. We were beaten into amnesia. So to gain back that African outlook, that interconnectedness of everything, looking at the principles of the universe, going within and understanding that the human being is made up of many different parts that must coexist in harmony so you can be beneficial to your people, not just to yourself, as what capitalism is all about. So we need to get the knowledge, get the books, have studies at our homes, introduce the knowledge to the children, because I mean, if the elders are lost, then the children, of course, will be lost. There's always a positive and a negative. There's always a push and a pull. So if the media keeps on pushing, we, of course, have to push back. We have to fight that brainwashing that's going on, and that we can do that through events. Collaborate with each other, especially locally. Put aside differences. Well, not big differences like, because right now there's the indigenous movement, which is trying to undo all the great works of the ancestors. There are those claiming indigenous to the Americas, when we know the Americas has no sign of any real archaic humans, like the Homo habilis, Homo erectus, Australopithecus. So the Americas is a new discovered place by human beings. The Africans were here first, but it was more the Pacific Islanders. The oldest bones found are bones of people more resembling the Australians, the Aborigines. So, and then of course the Asians, the Mongolians came in through the Straits of Bering. And then we have the different mixes and the African population getting lesser and lesser and an increase of the Asian population. And then came, of course, the transatlantic slave trade, which is incredible because we even have persons today denying the transatlantic slave trade. Of course, we have capitalism and slavery. I have it here. See if I can get it quickly. This would annihilate the argument instantly. Oh, I'm not here. Capitalism and slavery. Yes, Capitalism and Slavery by Eric Williams. He was able to go into the British archives. Sorry, I'm not getting the book right now. I'm looking for it. It seems to be distant. Yeah, but he went into British archives before they closed there, and he was able to amass a lot of information. And he put it all in the book, Capitalism and Slavery. So anyone looking to deny the transatlantic slave trade, this book would just annihilate that theory instantly. I also have Island of Memes, Haiti's Unfinished Revolution by Wade W. Noble. This goes into the psychology of Black people. How do we assimilate ourselves into a system that robbed us of our humanity, Africanness? We are the true Christ of the world. We will sacrifice on the altar of imperialism, Christianity, to birth that evil system we call capitalism today, which of course will implode on its own, because only the capital, without capital, there's only an ism. So you must have capital in capitalism. And the capital is what was robbed from under our very feet. Africa is the richest country with the poorest people. This should tell you, give you an inkling of what capitalism is. I want to show you all some nice books today. Some real nice books. The first person that really took me out of the Bible, because the Bible is not a history book. It's a metaphysical, Masonic manuscript. And not anyone can read it, because a lot of sacred information was hidden. It said, do not cast pearls to swine. That means the real secrets of the universe is hidden. It's hidden from the common man. Nature itself has a veil. They call it the veil of Isis or the veil of Osset. It's veiled, and you must study to lift that veil and see the truth of our existence. And without researching and studying, we cannot bring about the Wohem Mesu, the Renaissance we want to see. It will be impossible, because you are born naked of mind, naked of body, and you are clothed by your ancestors with fabric and knowledge. Africa, mother of Western civilizations. Dr. Ben, one of our greatest scholars. Not only was he a historian, he was an Egyptologist, or I should say Kemetologist, as we don't like using the word Egypt. We use Kemet, the black nation. And he was the one who opened my eyes and taught me about being African, African history, that all the Western civilizations, all the Western religions, will taken from, lie just on the periphery of our African sacred rites of passage. Literal, I draw reference to abstract and poetry. Many things before were written in poetry. The first drawings and paintings are abstract. If you go Kemet, we have a lot of abstract art. A system that was developed, I think, with Van Gogh in Europe of recent. But we dealt with abstract art. Art wasn't just something to look at and enjoy looking at it. It would make you think. It would connect the invisible with the visible, the right brain with the left brain. It was a science. I have also, again, by Wade Nobles. To reach our people, we cannot just rely on information. Anku Jasineb, Sai Amun-Ra, bless. Yeah, we cannot just rely on information, because we know the axiom given by the Greeks, I think, therefore I am, is false. A computer thinks. We act more on what we feel than what we think. So inspiration, in spirit, the energy, this is what we need, along with the information, to reach the children. What do people do with such depth of knowledge in a time where things are so much in chaos? There must be a practicability in the knowledge, a practicality in the knowledge. In the Wuhem Mesu, where's my Wuhem Mesu? In the Wuhem Mesu, which are our two publications, the Wuhem Mesu, of course, just meaning rebirth. Wuhem meaning repeat, Mesu meaning birth. It's written on there without any vowels, as there was no actual vowels in Kemet, which is the Medinetra, which is the hieroglyphic writings on the Merakuti or the pyramids. On the back, I have Mfundishi, Jehutimas, Kayan Hiru, El Salim. He's one of master teachers in America, doing some great works also on the continent in Ghana. The other next to him is the Rastaman ESP MacPherson. ESP MacPherson is one of our greatest ancestors in Rastafari. When you pour libation, make sure you remember his name. He gave his life to recording and adding to Rastafari. He transcended not too long ago. I think he was in New York. But I have some of his work in there which goes into the history of Rastafari. That it was not orientated or originated from Christianity. That's a misconception. It came from the Kumina, which comes from the Congo. And in the Congo, there's a system much unlike Christianity. In the Bible, you can find no family values. You can only find about your relationship, your personal relationship with an unseen God. There's nothing about family in the Bible. Even the God of the Bible took someone else's woman to have a child. Come on. But in there, the Wuhem Mesu first issue, I have a drawing of the Sphinx. And it was drawn by Baron Vivant, just reading behind the first page. Behind the first cover, sorry. Drawn by Baron Vivant Denon, a diplomat in Napoleon's list of scholars in the Egyptian campaign in 1798. The same campaign that Lieutenant General Ralph Abercrombie lost his life in. The same Abercrombie who reinstituted slavery in St. Lucia by use of the guillotine. For those who don't know, after the French Revolution, we had a year of independence. And the British sent Ralph Abercrombie to reinstitute slavery in St. Lucia by use of the guillotine on the Soufrière Square. The guillotine was the long blade they have coming down on your neck. I think it was invented by the French. I also have, well, yes, it was, if you went against it, of course, well, they were reinstituting slavery. Those who fought against the Europeans, they were said that they were shipped back to Africa. I think it was Sierra Leone. They were shipped back to Africa, and slavery still continued in St. Lucia. An important book to have is the history of St. Lucia. I had it close by. The history of St. Lucia is a good book to read. You will get a lot of information that would disrefute all of those, refute history of St. Lucia. Is there anyway? when the census was taken, I think in the 18th century, 1770 something, I believe, they took the census, and there you would find out how many Kalinagos or Caribs lived in St. Lucia compared to the African population and compared to the European population. The first St. Lucians were Europeans. They, of course, killed the Taino, the Kalinago, and they populated the island, St. Lucia. St. Lucia, of course, coming from a European saint, St. Lucy. So our basic foundation, when you talk about governing, it's European in St. Lucia. So we have to analyze our current economic situation on the islands, that through disenfranchisement, it is basically foreigners that pay the majority of the taxes, sometimes provide much of the employment. So it is very important that we come together. And through the use of the internet, we can set up events. We can get in touch with scholars, try to pay their passage, come together, have them come in, get toward the children, toward the youth. Start demanding that African history be taught in schools. Imagine that in 2020, we're still arguing for African history to be taught in schools, to be put on the syllabus. That's a shame. That's a big shame, because you could see it as a big failure. In the first issue of the Wohem Masu, on this, I think I have some different people on the back here. I have Wade Nobles, Dr. Wade Nobles, John Henry Clark, and Dr. Ben. I also have Franz Fanon, Jedi Shemsu Jehuti, also called Jacob Brothers, Ai Kweyama, of course, we read the 2000 Seasons by him, and a lot of their information, I put it in here. Because really we are echoes. We are echoes of people who were there before us, putting in the work, trying to lead people into new paths, to discover life again. Because as 2000 Seasons, as Ai Kweyama put it very beautifully, we are only spring waters, and we get dried up individually in the desert of no regeneration. I'll read a little piece of what he says. There it is. Spring water. Spring water, flow into the desert. Where you flow, there is no regeneration. The desert takes. The desert knows no giving. To the giving water of your flowing, it is not in the nature of the desert to return anything but destruction. Spring water flowing to the desert, your future is extinction. He says here, it is for the spring to give. It is for spring water to flow. But if the spring would continue to give and the spring water continue flowing, the desert is no direction. Along the desert road, spring water is the sap of young wood prematurely blazing, meant to carry life quietly, darkly from roots to farthest veins, but abruptly betrayed into devouring light, converted to scalding pus hissing in its own vessel's destruction. Along the desert road, spring water is blood of a murdered woman when the sun leaves no shadow. No spring changes the desert. The desert remains. The spring runs dry. Not one spring, not 30, not 1,000 springs will change the desert. For that change floods the waters of the universe in unison, flowing not to coax the desert, but to overwhelm it, ending its regime of death, that not a single perishable spring is the necessity. So here you see he's poetically telling you that no one of us can do it alone. It will take a river. That means we have to reach out to the youth and try and raise them in the knowledge, gather as many as we can to overflow the current menticide, the brain rot of our people who are hastening towards death. After all, they put us in a position of survival and not living. We live for bills day to day, and we kind of are rushing towards death, making no use of the time we have. We live for a Friday, we live for a weekend, and days pass by quickly. And what is being done? Nothing. We need to get our community centers back in order. In the second issue, Wahem Misu, I go into what is direly needed. The Boko. The Boko is another name for the community house in Kikongo. The Boko. Let me just read a little piece of it from the Boko. The Boko is a Congolese term for what we would call the community house. Our very efforts to demand justice for ourselves and others are thwarted by ingrained individualism, which is perpetuated by the systematic framework of capitalism. Abrahamic and many Eastern religions espouse an individualistic deity and ideas of individual salvation and love, which do not fulfill their fundamental roles in uniting and healing communities. In essence, the Boko is the place where the people come together at the village or town level to discuss the things that are obstacles or cataracts in the easy flow of communal living. In the current gross injustice being done to the populace by the current administration on this island, the Boko is the answer. The community would have one voice and not be silenced or overpowered by the voice of any district representative or minister. So this is just going a little bit into the Boko and how it's desperately needed. We must revive it and connect the people in the community together. We must do that first before we even try and change the government. And yes, I also went into the history of Rastafari. Touched on this. This is a very interesting chapter. Going into what I talked about, Bedward, Leonard Percival Howell. It was the first announcer of the Rastafari faith was Brother Leonard Percival Howell, which he rightly dubbed international salvation, a term which goes directly against the notion of individual salvation preached by the Abrahamic faith. He said in 1933, what is needed today is international salvation, not individual salvation. God never intended individual salvation. International salvation is what is wanted for the people today. So here you see our basic foundation is going against the principles of the Bible, which is more or less individualistic. That's how God could tell someone to sacrifice your son unto me. Even in the New Testament, it said that he'll come to put enmity between father and son, mother and daughter, incest, all kind of things in the Bible. Totally anti-family. I go into Joseph Nathaniel Hibbert and the Mystic Masons. I have this book by I have it here. No, I have this book by him, Macpherson, and he goes into the history dealing with the Kumina and how Rastafari is of African essence. It's not Christianity. It's very far from it. Also, I talk about what is direly needed, of course, rites of passage, Neta Keper. The rites of passage, what do the children need to know? Let's read a little bit on it. Since the education in Kemet or ancient Egypt was very wholesome, a far cry from what we have today, it was called initiation. These rites are meant to bring the young into the adult life, cultivating morality, skills, spirituality, aiding them in fulfilling their purpose. Unlike Western education, which means recollection, it deals with rendering the tools that would help them to refine their gifts, which they unknowingly came into the world with. Why Kemet and not another civilization, another African civilization? It is because Kemet was the greatest civilization on earth. And our ancestors who built it, the wisest of all men. In our Western world, at the tender age of 18, a teenager arrives into manhood, carrying only little knowledge and experience of life. If there is no initiation, the person might remain in the mind of an adolescent forever and in their future cause havoc in society, disregarding their responsibility to their community. It is the elders who must ensure that there are programs to educate, inspire, and uplift our children in light of the present circumstances of the island and the world at large. So this, I took, I took some information from Tudika Kilimanjaro. He's doing a nice selection, a nice, good work, very good work. A deep study of our history and what is needed, not just simply Africanticizing, I don't say romanticizing, Africanticizing our civilizations, but putting what we learn into play to reach the minds of the people. I also have, of course, Signs and Symbols of Primordial Man by Albert Churchward. He went all over the world studying the ancients, and he was very instrumental. This one, the introduction actually is done by the Professor Emeritus African World History, Hunter College, New York, John Henry Clark. And Albert Churchward, I think he did try to enter a secret society in Africa, but he was declined. Let's see here. I have also John Henry Clark. So all the books we are reading and collecting, we are putting a lot of information in these. There will be a third issue coming out soon. And we hope to get this circulated amongst the youth because they are totally distracted. And that distraction, many are benefiting from that distraction. Another great book, When We Ruled by Robin Walker. A very nice book. Yeah, well, we have some, these books are hefty. I know we have a problem with reading. That's why we were doing the journals, which are quite, easy to read, big print. Because I know after so many years of not reading, the brain becomes very weak. And by the first 2 pages, you'll be yawning. You'll be feeling sleepy. You'll be feeling sleepy because the brain hasn't exercised. There's not enough focus. The brain is a muscle. And if you're not reading, then you cannot exercise that muscle. That's how you exercise the muscle. Reading. Weed, marijuana, is not brain food as a lot of people think. Books are brain food. You know? We have to keep on the reading and to share the information with the children because we're just passing through. We're not here forever. And if you don't live your true self and you don't fulfill your mission, what you were sent here to be, what you were sent here to do, at the end of your days, you'll be full of regret. Regret is, we see when the heart is weighed against the feather, what gets the heart or the ib? It's not the actual heart, but it shows as a container holding a lot of emotion. And if it's full of regret, it will tilt the balance. It will be heavier than the feather of truth. So don't live a life of regret. Do a star chart. First thing you do your natal chart. When you do your star chart, then it will link you into your weaknesses, your strengths. From then, you can take it from there. And you'll see a lot of things happening. Let not money and economics drive you. Let your rediscovery of yourself. Let everything be a learning experience of growth. Of course, we have the ISIS papers by Francis Cresswell-Singh, Duawu Emyaku, with thanks to the ancestors. In this, she let us know that the lengths the European has gone to with white supremacy in an effort to save their species, which is a recessive gene, if not for wars, diseases, brainwashing, then these people would be nearly extinct today. The blue eye, the blonde hair, it would be an extinct species today. But true to all what they've done in the past, they are still here today, still reaping havoc. Oh, this is the book I was talking about. Capitalism and Slavery by Eric Williams, the ex-Prime Minister of Trinidad. I must say Trinidad produced many great men and great scholars. Trinidad. We had our own. We had George Edward Quinlan. We had Sir Arthur Lewis. But they had Henry Sylvester Williams, George Padmore, Stokely Carmichael, Kwame Ture, a whole list of scholars, man. Eric Williams. This is an ancient book, Ruins of Empires, by C.F. Volney. He's a European. Let me see if I get a nice piece for you in here. There's a piece I just love to read. Let's see. I don't think I'll be able to get it. But it was a part in the book, and he's speaking of all the different religions and different denominations. And he's asking them questions. And all of them are given different answers, different interpretations. And then he asks them, what's the shape of the sun? And all of them agreed on a circle or sphere. And then he would say that It is through our senses that we really can reach to truth and investigation. But it's basically he's talking about the zodiac, which is the astrotheology, which is modern day religion. This is a great book. Of course, we have Destruction of Black Civilizations by Chancellor Williams. So we have a lot of books here. I've counted this. We have over 100. There's a nice little one here. The Glory of the Black Race over the White Race, but they took out Over the White Race by Al-Jahiz. And this is a great book in terms of contemplating the religion of Islam and its racism in there. It was written in the 9th century, I believe, 9th or 10th century. So it's a very old book in the 9th century. It was written in the 9th century, and what he spoke about, now at that period of time, there was the Zanj Revolution, the Zanj Rebellion in Basra. And it was the greatest of African revolutions in history, the Zanj Revolution. And it happened under Islam. So it's a great book. In this, he speaks about Muhammad, why he's not actually, it's forbidden to put up the likeness of Muhammad. Why it's forbidden? It's because he was black. It talks about his grandfather, Muhammad's grandfather, who had the first name of Abed. And Abed is the word for black, which is synonymous with the word for slave in Arabic. A little about the White Lotus Temple. Our center point is actually Kemetic history, but not going only to Guyana Rastafari Council. Just think that this race of black men, they are pissed by Count Volney. Yes, Count Volney. Yeah, man. Yeah, Count Volney spoke about the Africanness of the great ancient civilizations of Kemet. But this is a great discussion going into the falsification of a lot of things by the Egyptologists, also by the European evolutionists, who came up with the theory that evolution has to do with things getting better. So the African is like the baby of civilization, and the European is the adult civilized human being. Whereas evolution really has, in an essence, really, it has to do with being better, but being better to suit your environment. So it's not about being better than what was there before. It's only adapting. Evolution means adapting. So it's a nice discussion to go into, the falsification of history and the claiming of Kemet as a European civilization. That would bring us back to Kerma, to Kush, Tanahisi, Nubia, Tseti, the Congo, Azania. It would bring us back all the way to South Africa. And where South Africa is actually the top of the world than we think it's the bottom of the world, I also have a book here by a Dogon priest, Philosophy Podium by Master Naba. a dreadlock African from West Africa. So, and of course, what study would be complete without Student Legacy by George G.M. James? He was actually murdered for writing this book because he exposed the Freemasons, where they get the knowledge from, where in their lodges and secret houses they worship Osiris and Isis, and the rest of the populace worships a imaginary figure, Jesus the Christ, who lamented on the cross, my God, why have you forsaken me? And we still have a problem with God forsaking us. Another one here. Our black seminarians and black clergy without a black theology. This is by Dr. Ben. This is a nice one going into our history. We are only teaching European dogma. We're not teaching African history and African spirituality. And there's currently a debate going on between Brother Jabari and the Kemetic shrines in the USA versus the researchers. The researchers must be very careful though. Remember, researching especially European works, which is a spiritless science, because our priests who are our scientists, they have divided science from spirituality. So in Brother Garfield and Ngozi, and these guys are very intelligent, but the intelligence is stemming strictly from the left brain, which analyzes, criticizes, looks out for differences. The right brain sees the whole picture. It sees similarities. Now, you have to bridge the gap between the two. That's why religion is written how it's written. It's written as a myth. Because going into the science, it takes eons, thousands of years to learn the science. You inherit it after thousands of years of a learning process, millions of years of a learning process, going all the way back to the Homo erectus, Homo habilis, who were learning. And what is bequeathed today to the children are eons of knowledge. So right now, the modern world is coming into contact where ancient faith clashes with science, and there's a butting of heads. So this is basically what's going on between the brothers in the shrines and the researchers in America. You see, they are not children of the trees. They are children of the concrete. They don't hear the animals in the evening. They don't walk and connect with the plants, the herbs, feel the grass under their feet, go to the waterfalls, get that embrace from nature. So in essence, you're living like a European. Everything has to be bought. There's not a real comfort embrace from creation. So Garfield and these guys, they had to be very careful, because our power as a human being is not just a mortal power, it's an immortal power if you tap into it with the right information, with the right mentorship, because we all need mentors. I had my mentor, as I said before, as a child. You need someone to point you in the different directions. There's too much information on YouTube. There's too much information on the internet. This can only lead to confusion. Only. You need people that were there before you, that have already gone through the hard tasks of disseminating the information, extrapolating the good, pointing to the authors, pointing to the great ones. So we need mentorship. There's too much information on the internet. It must be geared to a certain mission, a certain purpose. I was part of the Ethiopian World Federation before, until I got a little bit disillusioned. But in the Ethiopian World Federation, it's about disseminating ancient Ethiopian culture, which is not Christianity. And if Rastafari should say, well, Haile Selassie I was Christian, so then Rastafari must be Christian. That's a misconception. You would have to be a Christian to sit on the throne. So if he wasn't a Christian, he wouldn't be on the throne. And where did Christianity come from? It didn't come from Ethiopia. Because His Majesty himself says it was received by Philip, who baptized the eunuch of Candace. But we now know there's no Candace, there's Kandake, which is another name for queen. And we have a history of the great Kandake queens fighting against the Romans and the Greeks before they were actually defeated. We have Amenerenus, we have Amenishketu, we have a lot of great ones. So in the future, I would like this to be an ongoing thing, the Facebook Lives. Maybe next Facebook Live, we'll go into a book and dissect it and extrapolate all the good things that we can use to entice the youth. We need the dancing, we need the poetry, we need the drumming, we need the painting, we need the knowledge. That's the meaning of the Wajet, the Eye of Heru. It's missing a fraction, but nothing is all known. There's always a mystery. To get rid of the mystery is to actually get rid of life. The Almighty was known as Amun, or Amen Rapata, the hidden spirit of the Creator. So there's always a piece hidden. And that Wajet talks about the equations of the senses, including thought, and how they should all come together for you to truly have insight. So I'll leave you all with that. It was nice having you. Ghana, Rastafari Council, Blessed Love, Uncle Jasineb, Wawu, Senu. It's been a pleasure. Sai Amun Ra, keep up the great works. Don't give up, don't give in. To all others who were listening, Ranifer, have a blessed day. We will, of course, speak again. Blessed love. Duawu. Emyaku. Duawu. Amen Ra.